Welcome to Cram with Camila, where we cram for the RD exam. Today we're going to be talking about communication. And communication can be divided into verbal and non-verbal communication. You know, the verbal communication means when you are saying something. For example, you are interviewing a client and they're saying, okay, sure, okay, that's verbal communication. Now when it comes to non-verbal communication, it's whatever else that they're doing that does not involve words. So let's break that down. First, let's understand what kinesics mean. That just means physical communication. Think body language, for example. If somebody's keeping direct eye contact with you, that means that they're paying attention. If someone is looking down, looking away, perhaps they're preoccupied. If you're talking to someone and they are crossing their arms, usually that means that they don't like the message or they're just trying to avoid what you're trying to tell them. If someone keeps crossing and uncrossing their legs or tapping their foot non-stop, they're probably anxious. They are trying to get out of there, they have something else to do, or maybe they don't like the topic. When it comes to paralinguistic, that means how a message is being delivered. So think the tone of voice, perhaps the pitch. Are there any gestures that go with the message? So in paralinguistics, you may be able to detect if somebody is feeling anxious or angry, or if they're having a difficult time disclosing the information. When it comes to proxemics, just think it's like a spatial separation, aka personal space. If someone backs away as you're talking to them, that just means they need more personal space. If they come closer to you, that means that they are seeking a little bit more interaction. Or have you ever seen somebody that would sit and sort of protect themselves with an object? Even when someone sits in a car next to you and then they keep their purse on their lap the whole time, that probably means that they just need to feel a little bit more protected. Now let's just recap. If you are talking to someone and they are keeping direct eye contact, that means they are paying attention. If somebody's looking at the ceiling or looking away, that means that they're refusing to listen to you. If somebody backs away, they need more personal space. Foot tapping, that means that they're nervous or anxious. And of course, don't get verbal and non-verbal communication confused. I can tell you firsthand, I took a few quizzes and I noticed that I did not read the question thoroughly, which we all do sometimes, and the little catch on the question was all of the options were non-verbal and only one of them was the verbal communication option. So keep that in mind. Now that we discussed communication, let's talk about some of the things that could interfere with communication. There are 4 different things that can interfere with communication, which will include physical interferences, psychological interferences, physiological interferences, and semantic interferences. So for physical would be, for example, noise. Say you're trying to communicate with somebody, the phone is ringing, there is noise in the background, or I'm trying to communicate with you and my dog starts barking. There will be a physical interference, right? And then you have psychological, which means an emotional barrier. So are you trying to talk to somebody and let's say they are feeling some kind of way? So say, is that anger? Is the sadness? That will affect your communication. That will definitely interfere with the way you communicate with someone. When it comes to physiological interferences, now we can think about, for example, if somebody has some sort of disability, or perhaps someone speaks too quickly, which we all know what that's like. Or perhaps they speak too slowly, or perhaps, they are not comfortable talking to you, they're too shy, so they're mumbling a little bit. All those things could interfere with communication. When it comes to semantic, well, have you ever heard, that's semantics. That just means that there are different meanings to things, right? So if we're saying soda versus a pop, or if there are language barriers, that could just be semantics when there is different interpretations or different meanings attached to things. Let's discuss 5 different counseling techniques and why they may or may not work. Starting with evaluate. That is when you might make a judgment and it's not really solving a problem. So for example, if you tell somebody, well, maybe you drink too much soda. I suggest you just stop buying soda. You're evaluating. Another one would be hostile. Of course, no one wants to be hostile when dealing with someone else, right? So that would be when you have an uncontrolled frustration. So for example, you tell a person, well, maybe you're just not trying hard enough. That's pretty hostile. When it comes to reassuring, that is almost in the right direction, but not quite, because when you're reassuring a person, you are not really making a difference. You are not opening the doors for more communication. So for example, if you just tell somebody, oh, it's okay, it just takes time. Well, okay, it just takes time. You shut the doors, right? Now probing, that's kind of like opening the doors. Even though some people might just probe too much, that is a good way to continue that communication. So think about this when you were like, well, can you tell me more about this? Or define that for me. Oh, can you explain that? And then it comes the understanding technique, where you sort of paraphrase what the person is saying. So you can say, oh, you seem to be saying blah, blah, blah. You say it back to the person, so you show them that you're actually listening, and you say it in your own sort of words, and then you allow the person to continue with that conversation. Now, one thing that I do want us to remember that I think is super important, I'm sure you've heard it over and over again, you should ask open-ended questions. Well, that's great, but you try using that in practice. It will be like, how do I ask that? What makes an open-ended question? Is this an open-ended question? Well, here is a trick. A very simple way to remember what an open-ended question would look like. Just think that they would usually start with why or how. So, why do you want to change? Or how do you plan on doing this? Because that way the person's not just gonna answer yes, no, or maybe with a number, right? So remember, an open-ended question will begin with how or why. Let's talk about Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. What that is a motivational theory in psychology that states that people are motivated by the desire to satisfy specific needs. The ultimate goal will be self-actualization. So the hierarchy of needs are divided into basic, psychological, and self-fulfillment. Basic needs include physiological needs and safety needs. Physiological needs would be water, food, rest, warmth. Safety needs would include security and safety. Those are the basic needs. Now, when it comes to psychological needs, you have belonging and the need to feel love. That will include friendships, and intimate relationships. And then you have STEAM needs, which would be you want to feel accomplished. When it comes to self-fulfillment needs, it's achieving one's full potential. That includes creative activities. So to summarize, when we talk about physiological needs, just think physiologically, we want to have food, we want to have water, be able to sleep. And then when it comes to security, would be, are you safe from danger? Perhaps healthcare, employment will help you feel secure. Social needs would be your interaction with other people. Perhaps if you're talking about work, would be your co-workers, activities that a person might do as an employee. STEAM would include self-respect, self-worth, perhaps your responsibilities or your title. Self-actualization is, according to the hierarchy of needs, the ultimate goal, which would be, did you fulfill your potential? And that is Maslow's hierarchy of needs for you all. Let's talk about Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy can be divided into 3 different domains, including cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. The cognitive domain involves mental skills and acquisition of knowledge. What is knowledge? Knowledge is the ability to recall information. Okay, so think about school. When you go take a test, perhaps you have the knowledge of the material because you can recall the information. But does that mean that you comprehend the material? Not necessarily, because comprehension is the next level. That means that you understand the meaning of what is known. Makes sense? So you could have a knowledge where you are able to pick between the multiple choice questions, but does not mean that you fully comprehend the material. After that comes application, which means, are you able to apply that knowledge in a new situation? Then it comes analysis. Can you differentiate facts from opinions? We all can use some analysis nowadays, huh? Just saying. How about synthesis? That is the ability to integrate different elements and concepts to form a sound structure of the meaning. That's kind of a mouthful, huh? Synthesis. Okay, so you can integrate everything and form sound structure of meanings. Evaluation is the ability to come up with judgment about important concepts. So evaluation, you're coming up with your own judgment about the important concepts. Okay, that's good. Now let's talk about affective domain of learning. The affective domain involves feelings, emotions, and attitudes. There is this phenomena called receiving phenomena, where there is awareness of feelings and emotions and the ability to utilize attention. When it comes to responding, that is active participation of the learner. And valuing is the ability to see worth of something and express their feelings. That makes sense, right? You're valuing. So you're seeing worth in something and you're expressing your feelings. Organization is the ability to prioritize a value over another and create a unique value system. Organization, you're prioritizing one value over another. I like prioritization. That's a good thing. Characterization is the ability to internalize values and let them control behavior. Ability to internalize values. Okay. Now let's talk about psychomotor domain. That means when you can use your motor skills and coordinate the motor skills with your psychological skills. So you're gonna have perception, where you apply sensory information to motor activity. So for example, if somebody's cooking and then all of a sudden they notice that there is smoke coming out of the pot, they are using their perception to go back and turn the heat down, for example, right? Set is the readiness to act. So think, get ready, get set, go. So the set is the ability to act, meaning think of an overweight person that is, displaying motivation by engaging in exercise activity. Now, guided response is the ability to initiate a displayed behavior. Okay, that's easy. So think guided response. You have a recipe and you're following the recipe. You have a guide and your response is being guided by the recipe. Okay, in mechanism, you convert your learned response to habitual actions. The heck does that mean? Well, think about this. So say somebody is really used to cooking a recipe and they make the recipe over and over and over again. It becomes almost mechanic. They can just make the recipe without having to think about it too much. Now, when it comes to complex, overt response, that is the ability to perform skillfully a complex pattern of actions. Okay, so think about this. For complex, overt response, when you type it on your computer without looking at the keys, it's very complex, but you're able to do it without having to think about it too much because you already have the skills. Not me. They did not teach me that in school. Why didn't they teach me that in school in Brazil? Anyways, adaptation is the ability to modify learned skills. Okay, adaptation is easy. So you're modifying your learning skills and adapting to the situation. So for example, you know how to drive, but then it's raining and you have to adapt to driving slower to make sure that you're driving safely. Everybody out there is speeding when it's raining? Not nice. Now let's talk about origination. That's the creation of a new movement pattern for a specific situation. Okay, think a dance routine, for example. Well, and that is Bloom's taxonomy for you. Let's briefly go over cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy is a type of psychotherapy, and it focuses on modifying dysfunctional behaviors, emotions, or thoughts. It does so by analyzing irrational beliefs. And keep this in mind, when you are distressed, it will likely alter your perception. So, in cognitive behavior therapy, one of the goals is to identify harmful thoughts and then replace them with more realistic ones. So there's this thing called self-talk that sometimes could be an unconscious or biased belief. So for example, if somebody says, "Oh, I'm not good enough," or perhaps, "I'm fat," well, that is a form of self-talk, and those are negative types of self-talk. You could substitute them for positive ones. For example, "I love myself just the way I am." Now, when it comes to change talk, that is when somebody may verbalize the reasons for some behavioral change. So for example, for that person that was saying, "Oh, I'm fat," they could change that to, I want to lose weight to feel better. So that is just going to be an example of change talk. Now, keep in mind that, say for example, somebody drinks a lot. A change talk would not be, that's it, I'm done, I'm never drinking again, right? It could be something like, I don't like how I feel after I drink. I don't like that hungover feel. So that's sort of like opening the discussion, and it's starting some sort of thought that will lead you to perhaps beginning a change. Let's talk about the basics of motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is a counseling method, and the goal is to help clients resolve their issues and problems. Now, it's important to keep in mind that people change when they are ready to change. Motivational interviewing evolved from Carl Rogers' patient/client or person-centered approach. Also, counseling and therapy. One of the goals is to guide and not direct. Therefore, you don't give advice. You allow the person to make changes and decisions as they wish. So the first goal of motivational interviewing is to increase a person's motivation to change, and the second is to get a person to commit to making that change. Let's talk about the different stages of change. So it all starts with pre-contemplation, where somebody might not be interested in changing. So for example, a person may say, I don't need to change. Then after that, it goes to contemplation, where somebody might be thinking about it. So that would be, I may change. It's contemplating. Then it comes preparation, where somebody decides to make a change. I will change. No, really, I'm going to change. Then comes action, when they try to make a change. So that would be, I've started to change. Then after that, maintenance, where they can sustain a change for about 6 months or longer. So they have changed and they are sustaining it. Now, some may end there, but you might see a sort of relapse, right? When somebody may go back to their old ways. So that would be the 6th stage of change. So we'll go pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and then there might be the relapse as the 6th stage. Let's talk about a super fun theory called diffusion of innovation. There are 5 different categories of adaptation, you could say. Diffusion of innovation is how ideas, innovations, and behaviors get spread. We would have innovators, which will be the first to adopt an innovation. And usually they do not require input from other people. Then you have the early adopters, which are people, they are comfortable with change and comfortable with new ideas, and they will be the next ones to adopt a new idea or innovation. After that, you have the early majority. That is when the average person is adopting the idea, but they could be still cautious about it or perhaps a little bit skeptical. Then you have the late majority, when they are very skeptical to adopt a new idea, and they adopt it once is accepted by the majority of the population. So sometimes that could be due to peer pressure. And then you have the laggards, which would be the people that are very set in their ways, perhaps very traditional, and they're the last ones to make changes or to adopt different ideas and perhaps technology, and they would definitely be the hardest ones to appeal to. So let's summarize that. You have the innovators, the early adapters, the early majority, the late majority, and the laggers.